Hey everybody, Jay Baker here. I want to talk about a few things that make me uncomfortable. I also want to talk a little bit about grace is anarchy and loving your enemies. One thing is it's always made me uncomfortable is cancel culture, because it kind of just takes a person's worst moments in their lives, in their life, and just marks them forever. I probably feel this way because I saw that happen to my family, and we never escaped that. And even if I do anything publicly, it's always brought up. It's like we don't realize the scarlet letter just doesn't go onto the person who's canceled, but also their loved ones around them, and what that can do to them, and on so many different levels of life, and almost make being alive and living in this world impossible. And there's no hope in there, there's no redemption, and there's no forgiveness. So to me, it's always been an antichrist idea. I've always been surprised that progressive Christians seem to support it, and often back it up with their actions and their attitudes. But saying that, I also think the way we are deporting immigrants in this country is a bit like that as well, with no hope, destroying families, tearing people apart, and is also a type of cancel culture that needs to be looked at, especially when it's done with guns and the government's approval of that. I also think the way we treat homeless people in this country is something we've got to think about, raiding camps and making places, benches impossible for people to sleep on, and allowing, making laws that don't allow the homeless to be able to sleep in public and have nowhere to go, is not loving the least of these. How we're treating immigrants right now is not loving the least of these. It's not even close to love. Also supporting bombs and supporting wars, supporting the slaughter of innocent Israelis is not loving the least of these. Supporting the bombing on Gaza and all the civilian deaths and casualties happening over and over again, and all the families and children that are being destroyed and lives that are being destroyed. This whole eye for an eye is not loving your enemies. It's not loving the least of these. And we're missing out on it. We're missing this. It's not much less love. And the idea that we can't live in a world where we can say, hey, there's injustice on both sides, where we can't care about two different people on two different sides, is just ridiculous. We're called to love humanity. We're called to love each other. Having gang members imprisoned without due process and taken to prisons outside of our country and put into basically camps is not loving our enemies. It doesn't mean we like what people do. We don't like enemies. We don't like these things, but it's not loving them enemies. It's not giving them a fair shake. And of course, innocent people are going to fall through the cracks. This is not grace. This is not love. This is not what people who follow Christ are called to do. Being silent when injustice is all around us, especially when we have voices and platforms, so many these days, is not loving the least of these, is not loving your enemies. We are called to speak out against injustice, even when it is injustice against those we don't agree with. It's much like freedom of speech. Freedom of speech often protects the speech we don't want to hear. So also when our controversial speech comes out, it's protected. Letting the government do your dirty work and just saying, oh, well, is not loving your enemies. Letting the government be your justice is not loving your enemies. If you want to follow politics, I'm probably not your guy. If you want to say, well, I just follow politics and that's the way to go, and that's your thing. A lot of people use it. I feel like Christians often have become better at separation of church and state than the state ever has, the government ever has. I sometimes have people argue with me, and they seem to have to take out all of their belief systems within following Jesus and following Christianity in order to support this other system. And they often put that system at top. It's the Bible talks about having two masters, and eventually you have to follow one and then you end up not liking the other. And some of you have become so good at that. But the truth is you have to choose one. You have to follow one. One's going to have to trump the other, if you will. And my question is are we willing to speak about injustice? Now, these injustices aren't just conservative injustices. They're also liberal injustices. We've seen this happen. I've seen this happen with both conservatives and liberals, Democrats and Republicans on different levels. And I think it's time to ask ourselves, are we loving the least of these? Are we practicing grace that is truly anarchy? Are we able to love our enemies and even give justice to those folks? Often some of you will say one thing that's happened to your life or one thing that happened to a friend of your life and think that this whole group of people are worth a horrible judgment. It's like you make this blanket judgment on one or two things that you've experienced in your own life. But we sometimes need to take a deeper look into that. And I think that starts with grace. I think that starts with love. And I think that starts with justice. But a justice that has love and grace built within it. So thank you. That's my soapbox for today. And peace.